Dexter Morgan spent 8 seasons hiding in plain sight. He worked beside homicide detectives every day, handled evidence from crimes he himself committed, and walked out of rooms he should have been locked inside of. Luck alone does not explain a run like that. The real question isn't whether Dexter was a good guy or a bad guy. That debate has been had 1,000 times already. The real question is simpler. What did he actually do, moment by moment, that put him ahead of everyone around him? Cops, killers, and FBI agents included. There are 5 moments across the show where Dexter's intelligence, forensic skill, or ability to manipulate people put him a clear step ahead of almost everyone in the room. Some of these are quiet, almost easy to miss. Others reshape the entire direction of a season. Let's go through them one at a time and judge each one on its own before moving to the next. Season 1 gives Dexter his first real test, and it's not a kill. It's a puzzle built by someone who repeatedly stays ahead of the police. A killer starts leaving dismembered, completely bloodless bodies around Miami, and the department has no idea who is doing it or why. Dexter is the one person on the force who actually cares, not because he wants to catch the guy, but because he recognizes the work. He tells himself early on that this killer left no blood at all, and that idea genuinely impresses him. He even admits out loud that he wishes he had thought of it first. That single reaction tells you everything about how Dexter's brain is wired. He is not horrified by the crime scene. He is studying it, like a craftsman studying someone else's tools. The killer, using the name Rudy Cooper, spends the whole season dating Dexter's sister Deborah, and even proposes marriage to her, all while leaving a trail of bodies nobody can connect back to him. Dexter starts connecting the investigation to details that no one else could interpret the same way, especially his own buried childhood memory. The killer appeared to know intimate details of Dexter's childhood that only someone connected to that trauma should have understood, and Brian repeatedly uses carefully staged clues tied to Dexter's buried memories, making it increasingly clear that the killer understands Dexter on an intensely personal level. By the season finale, Born Free, Dexter puts it together that Rudy Cooper is actually Brian Moser, his biological older brother who survived the same shipping container massacre that created Dexter's own dark side. Harry rescued and eventually adopted Dexter, while the older Brian was institutionalized rather than taken in. Dexter was raised by Harry and taught a code intended to control his impulses. Brian was not. No detective uncovers the part that matters most to Dexter. Rudy is Brian Moser, his biological brother and the other child who survived the container massacre. Deborah dates him without realizing he is the killer. The department never discovers the full connection between the ice truck killer, the Moser brothers, and Dexter's childhood trauma. Dexter gets there through a combination of forensic clues, buried memories, and Brian's deliberately personal messages. This is the moment that proves Dexter's mind works differently from everyone else on the force. Not because he had more evidence, but because he was willing to look at evidence nobody else thought to connect. It's also the first time the show hints at something bigger, that Dexter's real gift is not killing people, it's reading them. That gift gets tested again almost immediately, this time while he's standing at a crime scene with his badge on, lying to a man's face without technically lying at all. If breakdowns like this are your thing, go ahead and hit subscribe now, because the next moment is arguably the most cold-blooded use of his job that Dexter ever pulls off. Season 2 puts Dexter in a position that should be impossible to fake his way through, analyzing a real crime scene in front of his own hostile co-worker while knowing something the department does not. At a poolside crime scene, a teenage girl is dead, and her stepfather is treated as the obvious suspect, sitting right there with blood on his shirt. Dexter photographs the man, examines the shirt, and reads the pattern as consistent with the man trying to revive the girl, not attacking her. In the logic of the scene, Dexter recognizes that the pattern is consistent with the stepfather trying to save her rather than causing the fatal injury. Here is the part that actually shows his genius. Sergeant Doakes, who already distrusts Dexter, is actively hunting for a reason to bring him down, and is standing right there asking questions. Dexter lies to Doakes at the scene, telling him the shirt shows evidence of blood missed consistent with an attack. Later, he submits the accurate blood report, which exposes the stepfather as innocent and makes Doakes look reckless for how hard he pushed the wrong theory. Dexter does this partly to turn Doakes' obsession against him and make him look bad in front of the department, since Doakes has spent months harassing and monitoring him. Dexter eventually prevents the stepfather from being wrongly blamed by submitting the correct report, but only after using the situation to embarrass Doakes in the process. This is Dexter operating on two tracks at once, solving the actual case with real expertise and running a small deception on the side aimed squarely at the one man watching him closest. It's a small moment, but it says everything about how Dexter thinks. That same instinct, misdirecting people closest to the truth, gets scaled up into the single biggest move of his entire life just a few episodes later. By the end of season 2, Dexter's entire secret life is one discovery away from being exposed. Divers uncover a mass underwater dumping site containing the remains of Dexter's victims. The press calls the killer the Bay Harbor Butcher. FBI Special Agent Frank Lundy has flown in specifically to catch him, and Dexter's own blood slide collection, souvenirs he took from his victims, has been stolen by Doakes, the one man who already suspects him. When the FBI recovers that slide box, they hand it to Dexter himself to analyze, because he is the department's blood spatter expert. Nobody in the room realizes they have just asked the killer to grade his own test. Dexter matches 18 of the 46 slides to the 18 bodies recovered from the water and connects the other 28 to missing persons cases. The analysis itself gives investigators legitimate information about the butcher's victims, and it also builds the exact case that will get James Doakes blamed for the murders Dexter committed. Dexter had already spent weeks sabotaging the investigation and protecting himself, doing things like deleting his marina security footage, moving his boat to a new slip, switching his dumping site to the Gulf Stream's stronger currents, sending investigators a rambling manifesto designed to create misleading theories about the butcher's motive, and sabotaging the air conditioning in the field morgue to slow down forensic work. Once Doakes became vulnerable, those efforts increasingly turned into a flame, as Dexter manipulated evidence and circumstances, so the investigation kept pointing towards Doakes, while Doakes was trapped in Dexter's cabin. The slide analysis becomes one of the strongest pieces pushing investigators towards Doakes. After Doakes dies in the cabin explosion, actually caused by Lila, not Dexter directly, the authorities conclude that Doakes was the Bay Harbor Butcher and died while trying to avoid capture. Dexter walks free, still holding his badge, still going to work every day as if nothing happened. This is the single boldest use of Dexter's forensic access in the entire series. He is not just avoiding suspicion here, he is actively directing a federal investigation towards a man innocent of the Bay Harbor Butcher murders, using his own real verified expertise as the weapon. No one in that room ever suspects the analyst is the one writing the ending. But not every genius move Dexter pulls involves misleading someone. His sharpest moment as an actual investigator comes 2 seasons later, chasing a killer that a trained FBI profiler had already been hunting for decades and still didn't fully understand. Season 4 introduces the Trinity Killer, a man whose murders have gone unsolved for over 3 decades. Lundy had identified 15 recent annual cycles and then found evidence pushing the pattern another 15 years back to 1979. That is roughly 30 years of killing, and Lundy still only had part of the picture. Lundy's theory was that the killer moved in a cycle of 3. A young woman bled out in her own bathtub, a woman forced to fall to her death, and a man bludgeoned to death. That pattern alone was disturbing enough to build a decades-long manhunt around. After Lundy is killed, Dexter continues pursuing the killer privately, while Deborah and Miami Metro investigate the case through official channels. Using Lundy's research, Dexter tracks the killer down and follows him, discovering that he is a man named Arthur Mitchell, living a completely normal public life with a wife and children. Digging further, Dexter builds on Lundy's research and connects a string of missing boys to the murder cycles, something nobody has linked to the Trinity pattern before, because on the surface, those disappearances look unrelated. The 4th victim does not reveal Arthur's identity. Dexter has already found and begun following him. What it reveals is the missing piece of Arthur's ritual, a 10-year-old boy buried alive in cement days before the other 3 killings happen each cycle. Dexter realizes the 4th victim represents Arthur himself as a boy, completing a ritual based on the destruction of Mitchell's childhood family, his sister's death in the bathroom, his mother's suicide, his father's death, and Arthur's own childhood trauma, all being reenacted on strangers, cycle after cycle. Understanding that 4th piece gives Dexter a much clearer sense of the sequence Arthur follows and what kind of victim comes next. Lundy spent years studying the pattern without discovering the missing 4th victim. Dexter builds on that research and finds the piece that finally makes the whole ritual make sense. It's also the moment the show proves Dexter's guilt was never really about killing. It was about seeing connections other trained professionals walked right past. Now, drop a comment below on this one. Out of everything so far, which move do you think took more nerve? Framing Doakes with real forensic work, or piecing together a ritual that fooled the FBI for decades? I'm genuinely curious which one you rank higher. The final genius move of Dexter's story is not a piece of forensic analysis, it is an exit. In the series finale, Dexter takes his sister Deborah off life support after she suffers irreversible brain damage from a gunshot wound. He carries her body onto his boat, the slice of life, and drops her into the ocean, in a deliberate echo of the way he disposed of many of his victims. Then he steers the boat directly into an approaching hurricane. Later, wreckage from the slice of life is discovered, and Dexter is presumed dead. To everyone who knew him in Miami, Dexter Morgan appears to have died in the storm. His identity as the real Bay Harbor Butcher remains undiscovered, while Doakes remains the man officially blamed for those murders. The final scene of the show reveals Dexter is alive, living under a new identity, working for a lumber company in Oregon. Critics have argued for years about whether this was planned as an escape from the very beginning, or something Dexter decided on the fly. What is not up for debate is the outcome. Dexter's apparent death gives everyone in his life a reason to stop looking for him, while the Bay Harbor Butcher case stays exactly where it already was, officially closed and attributed to Doakes. Whether it was a plan from the start or a decision made in the moment, at the end of the original series, Dexter successfully disappears under a new identity, closing the loop on every close call that came before it. Every moment of this list comes back to the same thing. Dexter noticed what everyone else missed, whether it was a brother hidden in a stranger's face, a shirt that told the truth about a crime, a slide box that could have exposed him, or a ritual buried inside 30 years of case files. Take away the knife, the plastic sheeting, the boat, all of it, and Dexter is still the most dangerous person in every room he walks into, simply because he sees what other people look right past. That is really the split this whole video is circling back to. There is Dexter the Killer, which is the version most people talk about, and then there is Dexter the Mind, which is the version that actually explains how his real identity stayed hidden through 8 seasons, from people who were, on paper, better trained than he was. Lundy traced Trinity murders across decades of cycles, but never discovered the 4th victim. Dexter later found that missing piece using Lundy's own research. The FBI handed Dexter evidence that could have brought investigators dangerously close to his secret, and he helped turn it into another piece of the case that ultimately got pinned on Doakes instead. The knife was never the real weapon, his attention was. If this changed how you've seen what Dexter was actually capable of, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next full breakdown.